Hello, and welcome to a little video about trigonometric ratios and the abbreviation of the infamous SOH CAH TOA. Now, SOH CAH TOA is a type of abbreviation that helps us remember the ratios for the three main trigonometric functions. All the rest of the trigonometric functions that you will ever learn about are derived from these three. So let's talk about them. First, we have sine. It's spelled S-I-N on when we're working with it in math, but it is pronounced sine. Now, if you notice on the abbreviation up there on SOH CAH TOA, it's S-O-H. O stands for the word opposite, and H stands for hypotenuse. And we'll discuss all of that right after we translate SOH CAH TOA. So sine is OH, so that means opposite over hypotenuse. Next we have cosine. It's spelled C-O-S when we work with it in math, but it's pronounced cosine. Now, in the abbreviation of SOH CAH TOA, we have C-A-H. The C is for cosine, the A stands for adjacent, and the H once again stands for the hypotenuse. Lastly, we have tangent. In math, we see it T-A-N, but it's pronounced tangent. And in the abbreviation SOH CAH TOA, you see T-O-A. The O-A next to the T stand for opposite over adjacent. Now, personally, I don't like spelling out these words each time, especially if I'm using this to remember problems or solve problems like on a test or something like that. So what I like to do is just use the first letters, just like SOH CAH TOA does. And of course, I can't get away without a little bit of color coding here to connect everything together. So instead of opposite, I'll be using O. Instead of adjacent, I'll be using A. And instead of hypotenuse, I'll be using H, just to make things a little easier. Okay, now when we're talking about opposite, hypotenuse, and adjacent, we are talking about a right triangle and its sides. So let's take a look at two right triangles, no particular sides labeled with any values, okay? What we're really going to be focusing on is labeling the sides according to the angle we're working with. And this is what I mean. So in this triangle, we have an angle up here labeled with a theta, and that little circle with a line in it is actually a Greek letter, theta. This is a right triangle, and it has to be in order for us to do any trigonometry with it. Okay, so I like to draw in my right triangle symbol right there, that right angle. That right angle automatically tells me that this side right here is the hypotenuse. So I'm going to label it with an H. That is an ugly H. I'm going to do that one more time. Now, I always start with the hypotenuse because I think it's the easiest one. It's across from the right angle. The next one I like to do is the opposite side. Now, the way I find the opposite side is I put my pen, pencil, finger on the angle that we have. That's labeled, so this theta, and I draw straight across. This will be my opposite side. And then I really only have one thing left over, adjacent. I like to do it this way because adjacent is the least common word that I use in my everyday life. Hypotenuse, yeah, okay. I guess I don't use that in my everyday life either. But that one for me is easy to remember because it's across from the right angle. It's that opposite and adjacent that always would mess me up when I was younger and when I was first learning this. So the way I began doing it is by first labeling opposite, because I definitely knew opposite was straight across. And then the leftover side was always adjacent. You can label them in whichever order you'd like. Let's do this one more time with this triangle. Again, I want to draw in the right angle because that's just how I like to do things. That shows me right away, here's my hypotenuse. Okay. Next, I'm going to do my opposite side. So I put my finger on the theta and I go right across. That's opposite. So all I have really left over is adjacent. Now let's apply that to some triangles. So here are two triangles that are the same size because that's how I labeled them. Their theta, the angle that I'm looking at, is different each time though. So let's see how this turns out. Now first I would like to write out my ratios. So SOH CAH TOA. SOH CAH TOA. And I guess while I'm at it, I'll do the next one as well. So, whoops, I started writing the C. CAH TOA. Okay, let's do it. First things first, let's label the hypotenuse, because I like doing that first, so we're going to do that first. There it is, 5. So I'm going to put in 5 everywhere where I have a H for hypotenuse. Okay. Next, let's do opposite. So here I have my theta in this corner down here. And I'm going to draw an arrow from it across. There's the opposite side. So in number 1, opposite is 3. So let's fill in the 3 for opposite. Okay. Well, that really leaves me with one choice for adjacent, and that's 4. So I'm going to fill in 4. All right. So I'm just rewriting this to show you how it's usually just written without the OH. So sine, if I asked what's sine of theta, you'd say it's 3/5. And I'd say, okay, well, what's the cosine of that theta? You'd say 4/5. And if I said, hey, what's the tangent of that theta? You'd say 3/4. Well, let's see what happens when I move the theta. So now I'm looking at the top angle. Right? First things first, in the second triangle, hypotenuse. There it is, 5. Okay, that did not change. And it shouldn't in this case because we're using the same triangle. The value across from the right angle did not change. Okay, so that's the hypotenuse. Perfect. Now let's do opposite. So I'm going to take my finger, pen, pencil, put it on my angle and go straight across. Ooh. In this case, my opposite angle is 4. Which only leaves 3 to be adjacent. So in this case, in this theta, when I asked for sine, you'll say it's 4/5. If I asked for cosine, you'd say it's 3/5. And if I asked for tangent, you'd say 4/3. So take a look at those two problems. We use the same triangle. We just put the value of theta in a different place. That changed how sine and cosine and tangent look, even though we use the same triangle. So the most important part in trigonometry is to be very careful in labeling the sides according to the angle that they ask. Now, we don't always call the angle theta. Sometimes we call it x, sometimes we call it y, sometimes we call it a, sometimes we call it b. It doesn't matter. Theta is just another variable. It's just another letter that holds place for something that we do not know. Okay, so that's a little video about SOH CAH TOA. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask me or your teacher. Have a wonderful rest of whatever day it is for you. Bye!